Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana May and
Jackie Sanders. We're two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
we talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we drop a new episode.
On today's episode, we are so excited to have fellow artist and muralist Brandon Bell. Welcome, Brandon.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to discuss your creative journey to We Are Limitless Studios and your art catalyst for change. But before we dive in, let's go ahead and share a little bit more about you and your background and your work for our listeners who may not be familiar with it quite yet.
So, Brandon is a muralist, mentor, and creative entrepreneur whose work transforms communities and empowers artists. As CEO and co-founder of We Are Limitless Studios, Brandon leads an agency that provides internships, partnerships, and mentorships to help artists transform from small studio art to large-scale public projects. Brandon regularly speaks at schools, sharing his journey and inspiring students to explore public art, creativity, and the transformative power of artistic expression. Recently, he authored Positive Mental Artists, a guide blending personal insights and actionable strategies to help creatives build resilience, foster growth, and unlock their potential. Through innovative projects, mentorships, public speaking, and his book, Brandon continues to demonstrate the transformative power of art to inspire, connect, and create lasting change.
And of course, it's a very formal introduction for our listeners, Brandon, but how would you describe your work to someone who maybe has never seen it before?
I would say alive and very community focused.
I love that, especially hearing about all the different types of work that you do, from obviously murals to your book, public speaking. Energized and alive, definitely, I feel like is a good description for that.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Now, Brandon, can you tell us a little bit about the story of how you became a muralist and then what led you to start We Are Limitless Studios?
For sure, I'd be honored to. I would say I actually got in a my whole path along this mural journey has been very synchronistic. I have to be like completely honest and say it was almost like handed to me. I never was necessarily looking for it. I have been pursuing art, as some sort of career for the last 15 years or so. And I would do a lot of studio home paintings and stuff like that. I slowly started pushing them out into the world, doing them at like art shows or like music venues. And I started doing a little bit of street stuff here and there. And one day I see like um, I don't know if I would call this a mural, but I had my first chance of creating public art. I got to do an electric box when I saw the city of mine that I'm nearest, where I was doing a lot of business in. They had like an open call. And that was the first time ever I actually painted something in the public. As far as how a mural essentially came about, just very lucky. It's just a right place, right time kind of situation. My partner Desiree, who she's also the co-founder of We Are Limitless Studios. She made a new friend. This woman owned a personal gym and like a yoga studio, and I actually gifted her a painting. And that painting sat in her studio. One of her clients saw it. He was a veteran. He's a veteran who owns a construction company. He just took place in they just opened up shop in a new building downtown. He saw that painting, really loved it, and asked. I don't know how I don't know how that conversation fully went, but I just know that he found out we were local, and at the right time, Desiree's walking in one day as he's leaving. The woman Jerry, whose studio was, introduced the two. He asked if we'd be interested in painting something on the side of his wall, and I just remember checking it out, looking up, and just being like, "How the hell are we supposed to do that?" And one thing led to the next, and through Desiree's and honestly, the client himself was just so open to us just trying it and figuring it out. And he asked if like if we thought we could do it, and if the answer was yes, he's like, then this is the perfect place to figure it out. So we just had an amazing opportunity to be able to paint something in a very prevalent area of our downtown. And at the time, it was pretty much the first mural of its size in that particular area. There's really not that many around here. And it opened my eyes to what public art actually meant, as random people would walk by and tell us how much it meant to them or how much they appreciate it. And we would barely have anything up on the wall sometimes, or just looking like a mess, and just the appreciation everybody felt. So that's essentially how we didn't just get the opportunity, but it kind of sparked the idea for me to do it potentially long term at that time.
Nice, nice. And are you close to Pocomoke, Maryland?
Very close. I actually went
What
to high school there. Yeah. Grew up in
nice.
DC. Yeah,
Where's We Are Limitless Studios based out of right now?
yeah, I'm actually so Salisbury, Maryland. That's where I'm at right now, our studio. So
Salisbury.
we're in
Okay.
Salisbury. Yeah, I live in a little town right outside of it.
Oh,
Nice,
love
nice.
that.
And then you just drive over to Ocean Drive and Snow Hill and all that corner.
Oh yeah,
I love it. And now, I mean, sounds like such a prevalent project to have so early on. And I think I appreciate you saying you kind of stumbled into it, but I feel like many artists that we talk to, that's typically how the journey goes, right? It's
yeah,
typically like, okay, well, this opportunity happened and having the courage and excitement to take over. So yeah, I love that. And now, but obviously transitioning from creating art in your studio to large scale murals is very different. So what was that process like for you to do that?
for sure. I mean, at the time. I would say like I mean the best word would be like intimidating for sure. I remember at the very beginning, I trusted myself enough to know that if I thought I could do it, I could, but I also knew that if I didn't know how, I'd figure it out, but it was still intimidating. Like especially once I signed like an actual agreement with a contract and all sorts of stuff, asking about insurance and yada yada, and I'm using like heavy equipment for our first time. It was like very real. So we just try to figure out how to get up on the wall. The first thing we tried was a projector, and the projector wouldn't allow us to tilt the right way. And I'm trying to raise this thing up really tall, so that didn't work. So I just went the old school method that I knew, which was how I did portraitures like on paper, which was just doing the old school grid method. This was before I learned about a doodle, so we literally measured everything.
Oh
It took a lot of
no.
time. Oh yeah, but it made everything to scale, and it was different. You know, we used brushes at the time. You know, looking back, it's cool to see those projects because it's still up. It looks beautiful. It's still like a very prominent piece downtown. But I look at it and I go, man, we could have done that at this point, obviously 10 times faster, more efficiently. But that's part of the process. Like even still to this day, when we take on something new, it's still the same sort of thing. Each wall is different. It's its own canvas. It comes with its own complexities, its own little nuances and stuff. And even though we keep learning, I now know like for sure, like there's not to be delusional and assume that I'm going to have any idea really what I'm stepping into until I start the actual project.
Yeah,
That makes
especially to your point, like different size walls, different materials. Like, okay, how do I prep the surface? That question alone is kind of a gateway to so many more questions. But I appreciate you also bringing up that looking at other projects, like you know that it could be a lot more efficient. Because I think especially as artists, anytime we start something new, we kind of know in the back of our head or maybe get frustrated with ourselves of I should be doing this quicker or I could be doing this a better way. But that's just part of the process is learning and having those hiccup moments of, all right, hopefully this is the longest it's ever going to take me. And with each project, I'll get quicker, but you have to go through those growing pains in order to get to the other side where you're like, man, I could do that in 2 days, not 10 days. Like I spend time out there.
Yeah, I'm 6 years in, and it's not just myself anymore. We're starting to work with a lot of artists that are local and even out of the area a little bit. So I know with them I have to be a lot more strategic with like planning certain things. But at the end of the day, I have this motto, which is just show up because at this point I know life happens and I get thrown for all sorts of curveballs and truthfully, like just painting by myself at like, it used to be just Desiree and I, but just painting, even with us too, it was some of those jobs were so large that it just consumed us. So I got to the point where I realized like, yeah, managing and growing and actually running a business is completely separate than the actual painting portion. And the painting part, like
Mhm.
that just show up for that. Like, get piece by piece. And that's all you can really do is just show up as do as best as you can. And stuff's gonna get stuck. You're gonna forget materials, things are just gonna happen. And at this point, I know like, okay, it's like I said, I'm not delusional in thinking that it's going to go perfect. So when stuff just happens, I just roll with the punches. And like I said, we just take day by day at this point, and end up getting done, and we create some amazing things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And especially for those folks starting out, I mean, it definitely helps to, what is it, under promise and over deliver. Give yourself a little bit extra time,
Mhm.
especially if it's the first time on a tall lift or first time using like a sprayer or something
Um,
like that. So it definitely helps. Like, yes, you'll figure it out, but also like give yourself some grace while
I
you're in
tell
it.
100%. I tell anybody that like starts working with us, like if I say, even to this point, if I say it's going to take a day, it's going to take two. Like That's just usually the nature of stuff. Something's gonna like something almost always comes up. We barely ever have flawless days, but it like I said, if you just roll the punches and just let it be what it is, it turns into a fun thing. Stuff getting not working out in your favor. Again, you learn from it. You might not be able to master it, but it's like it's all a lesson.
Yeah. I feel like every project, that checklist, the packing checklist keeps getting bigger.
That's for sure true. And I still forget some of those things on that list. That's what's
Same. Same.
no joke.
That's how I'm like, it's always helpful. Like, as soon as you know the wall, it's like, what hardware stores are nearby? Because chances are you're gonna have to
I
stop at one of them at some point.
I gotta tell you what, like we are at this point, like and it was since this time last year, we've been so busy that I got to the point where I'm just taking project by project. So like while we're wrapping up one, I'll start finally really scouting out the other one. We'll get the lift on site, and that thing might sit there for a few days to a week before I actually have a chance to touch the wall, but I at least get to plan it by then because I
Yeah.
would always I would always stress myself out trying to, really pre-plan for a lot of stuff. And, again, you can always do better, but it's like I'm at this point with at least where we're at. I'm like, just again, day by day, doing one project as best as we can at a time and just, pre-planning as best as we can. But again, not like stressing myself out to know that I have to have everything figured out prior to actually starting that job. Because most of it's, even when I think I got it down, you guys know, you don't. Something's gonna come up.
That's when you find a piece of wall falling off and you're like, are you serious right now?
We just took a job and there was a
The
like a
wall looks
high,
great.
we
Not when
just
you're up there and there's a
we just
trunk
took a job
falling
that had
off.
this, we took this job that had this, I don't know what wattage the electrical cable was, but we're up there, we're painting. We know we're not supposed to touch it or be near it. And, somebody comes out at some point and just politely says, like, heads up, you're supposed to be 10 feet away from that thing. You guys are like, testing your
Way
life
too close.
in there. And I didn't think about that until we finished it up. And I'm like looking it up afterwards. I'm like, what are you supposed to do when there's high voltage stuff? And that's the thing. Like I said, I didn't even like, even though I'm at that job site and looking at it, now I know, okay, you actually need to really look for some of this stuff because not every building, again, it's its own site. It's got its own environmental challenges for sure.
Especially when you're
Yeah.
up in a lift that's full of metal. You don't want to be near a high voltage wire.
Nope. Yeah, I need to share that. I have like some crazy photos and video of it, and like Desiree was up there with me. And I was like, if once we go up, we're getting it done and coming back. And like the goal is to stay up there. So we brought everything we needed. And then afterwards, like I said, I'm like, oh, you're supposed to call and have these cut off. Oh, you're not supposed to be that close. Gotcha.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Nobody
Be
told me we
finished.
would be like, I had no idea how like thrill seeking this stuff would end up turning into at some point.
I mean, on the right side, now that means like when you do a site inspection, you're automatically like, we're not going that far up. Like
Safety.
the
Yeah,
design's
or
not going up there because we're not getting anywhere near that thing,
for sure. Or
not worth
like
the
you,
risk.
yeah, if you really want something there, you need to arrange with the power company how you're going to cut that off. And that's going to probably, you know,
Exactly.
run into its own
Yeah.
little. Yeah, I never even thought about that until it happened. So yeah.
Yeah, we definitely learn with every project for sure. That leads me perfectly into the next question. Brandon, how do you collaborate with clients, nonprofits, local businesses, even other artists to, try to get those mural jobs done and bring them to life? Because as we all know, murals are almost like commissions. It's not just a one person island. There's usually more folks involved.
Oh, for sure. Like I think their first job really did kind of like set me up for like not the best. I assumed we could tackle stuff, but it didn't really set me up for like what was the realistic world of actually turning this into a business. Because like I said, right place, right time. Even though a lot of jobs have kind of fallen to us, it was just it just and things weren't that smooth, at this point. So once as far as like how we end up developing things to grow into a community effort endeavor, well, it actually started still with that very first mural, which was like as soon as we were painting it, I don't know, we were nearing the ending of it, and something just clicked in my head, which was like, the way that our client was in general, and all the community members that we had come out, and how the city, the news came out and supported us. It was like a very humbling thing, and I realized, very quickly, this is a community piece. This is beyond us. And I remember asking the client if he'd be okay with us allowing like several days for some of the community members to come out and paint a portion of the design. And he was all on board. And like, looking back, that just happened naturally. But looking back, that's actually been the staple for what has allowed us, I think, to, grow into who we've become, which is essentially becoming like a very community first oriented, agency. Whereas, at the very beginning, when I started, it was just, oh, we're making beauty pieces. Like people do want to just improve the exterior of their building, or they do want to see some sort of response to when people, think about them. But for the most part, I realized a lot of the people that we end up working with, obviously their objective was to, put some sort of positive effect out into the community. So the more I understood that, the more I realized like, okay, like we're doing much more than creating beauty pieces, we're storytelling. And as some of these projects, again, like I mentioned, they were so big. Truthfully, like just between Desiree and I, because I have 3 children and they're all homeschooled. So just take that for what it is. That means my hands are busy. So as soon as we take on some of these projects we would take on, we would literally lose grip of so many other facets of life where they would just consume us. And very humbling at the same time, like, wow, they're like, it's finally I was able to, have situations that paid us enough that we could comfortably just do this art stuff. But like I said, it also calls us to not really focus on a lot of other areas of our lives. So as we slowly realize, like, we can't just do it ourselves, let's start trying to find some help. Well, we ran into this issue, which was where I'm from in this little town, there's really not that many murals in general, especially large scale ones. So when we put out like a little SOS looking for help, we realized not too much longer after that we needed to say no experience necessary. If as long as you can paint, we'll teach you the rest. And believe it or not, our very first person that we had work with us turned out to be absolutely amazing. Her name was Kayla Allen, and she just got married and moved away to California, but she helped us fulfill so many projects last year. And she really showed me what it's like to one, take somebody who has a desire and ambition to want to paint something large but has no idea how, but it really opened up the door to like seeing that like, man, like how I actually think I can keep doing this, because truthfully, I've the type of artist that I was in general, like I'd make a lot of stuff and I didn't care if anybody saw it. So now and I didn't do commission work. So it's like I make it, you like it or not, I don't know. But now when somebody's like, hey, I have this, this building and I want it to represent hope and we have 1,300 patients and this, and I'm like, that normally what I would say, like, not interested, that's felt so compelling that somebody would want me to fulfill something like that, that I'm like, okay, like I want to see these things happen. But in order for me to actually see these things happen, I have to actually start relying on other people, because it can't just be us on a little island anymore, because again, it was just too much. So we slowly started teaching people, and the types of clients that naturally were kind of gravitating towards us. And again, we don't really do much marketing. We live in a fairly small area. Um, our social media game is like we just hit 800. Like we're 6 years in business, we just hit 800. Like I spent 2 years, didn't even touch that thing. We really never focused on that. It was so much community focused, and we just got to the point where, because I was out in the community so much I already knew a lot of people in the area, but because we started doing these community focused projects, or I'm at these events and stuff, just supporting other things. Didn't take long for us to be known, especially once we started directing the message towards, again, the name itself, We Are Limitless. The goal is to inspire everybody. So it just naturally evolved into like a community oriented thing, to where clients are looking for us to help initiate some sort of, most oftentimes, a community activation of some sort, storytelling. It could be like a Black Heritage mural. It could just be a street mural or something. We're about to do asphalt art with this local college this Saturday. But then what made me, after without getting too deep into it, my mom's birthday is actually coming up, but I lost her on April 10th. Well, her birthday is on April 10th. I lost her a few years ago during one of our big projects. And after that project, we had one more contract, and I just literally couldn't wait to stop. And it wasn't until another opportunity came about when I realized the only way that I can pursue this thing as an actual career is if I involve, it's more than me. It can't be Brandon just making artwork. I need to figure out how to create different style stuff. I need to figure out how to incorporate other artists. I need to figure out how to get involved with, I'd see a ton of kids that I would know, like from the local in the area, from the jobs and stuff that we did. That, like, we had homeless kids stop by often just to watch us paint. So that's how we started getting ingrained with the schools a lot. I take my children's education super serious. So we slowly started, realizing that a lot of kids in the school system, they don't have like, we started doing work with a nonprofit that essentially helped a lot of homeless kids. And I had no idea that there was like, oh my God, like we have a small town. There's 50 children don't have places to sleep every night. So that slowly started getting me into like thinking and considering them specifically. So without going too much into that, we slowly started, having opportunities to work with the schools, and we started doing little mentorship programs with them. And it kind of just evolved naturally, where we needed help, so we got somebody on. We saw a need for help in the community and for mentorship and stuff, so that started happening, and then eventually it just became like an ethos of ours, to where we're actually pursuing these opportunities now and trying to create them instead of just allowing them to show up to us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that's such a cool mindset to have too, is embracing that expansion mindset, right? Like you said, not just relying on you or be like, okay, now there has to be 27 hours in a day in order for me to get all these things done. And really uplifting your community in the process is absolutely incredible. And you touched on it a little bit, but I want to circle to the storytelling aspect of it. Obviously, just by bringing artwork to life, that's an element of activating a community. But what role does storytelling play in the work that you make, maybe just imagery wise or the process of working with the client, talking to community members before you design it? And how do you incorporate those community narratives into deciding what projects you take?
Sure. I appreciate how you worded that because until you said it that like that, my mind was stuck on one definition of storytelling. But yeah, the way you address that, you realize that there's different facets and different angles in which you'll storytell for different parts of the job. So like the client
Yeah.
relationship, how is that being directed and stuff? That's its own thing versus yeah, the imagery itself, how is that being storytold? So
Mhm.
yeah, I defaulted to like the imagery, but I would say like at like it's funny looking back at and this should address portions of what you said, but looking back on some of my previous emails, I could like they're so long and they're so wordy and there was so much stuff to where I'm like, ugh, like you know what I mean? Like it just was very distasteful. And I'm looking at how the relationship that I have with these people now, I don't. It was just like I had no idea until it happens, right? So somebody would reach out to us, we'd do a job. I would do my best, but I would try to explain every little thing I could to them. And when it was jobs done, I'm saying thank you, and I'm literally just on to the next thing. Now I realized like, oh my gosh, like some of these businesses, I'm literally at this point, some of them I've had some very intimate relationships with a lot of these cool clients of ours, but for the most part, some of these jobs we're at their facility for 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, and like we're like learning about them. We like I had no idea they did what they did. I had no idea that they serve the community in the way that they did, or they have these types of people, or all the clients or patients that they might have, or just the anybody who's just like the patrons that are making their way in. I just got a chance to meet so many, so I realized like during each phase of this thing, there's different facets to where how people are going to actually take in who we are and what we're doing. There's some people who are only going to see us at the very beginning just to show us where hey, here's electrical stuff, here's this, here's that. How do I talk to them? How do I, handle that situation? There's going to be people that, usually as you're probably aware as well, like somebody who's responsible for probably either like, like talking to you at the job site. So it's like, hey, even though they had nothing to do with signing you, they're now responsible for basically making sure the door's unlocked or showing you some things. And they're the ones that sometimes are help guiding that ship. So I think, and then there's of course some of these projects which last a little bit of time, people will slowly actually start seeing you physically setting up and building these things. And what I now know for sure, and the culmination of all this stuff is like at the end of the day, these pieces, we've been very fortunate. None of the stuff that we've put on, we guarantee X amount of life on it, but nobody's ever promised us that they have to keep it on the wall. So we've been very fortunate that we've seen so much. Our oldest piece is almost 6 years at this point, and that thing slowly, literally has no choice but to tell a different story day in and day out as new community members move into town, as more people end up getting a chance to see it. A girl who's actually helping us now, she actually had no idea. She saw some of the murals we did in town, but she had no idea we did the first one that I mentioned because she doesn't even go to that portion of town. So that design, like to some people, it meant like like, hey, this was a moment where I got to engage with the community to come paint. To her, it was just a very intimate thing where she's just walking down the street because she just happened to go to lunch with somebody and she sees this piece or whatever. And it represents its own thing to her. So that I now know, like looking at these designs, I would think very much of like, okay, what do I like to do based on what I want to do? What is the client necessarily looking for and who's involved with their business? Now I'm like, okay, where's this piece of artwork sitting? Who's going to be the main spectator aside from the company? And how's that going to actually shape and change, the environment over time? Because I've seen, it's I'm very fortunate. I've definitely had some like, ill words said based on stuff that has been done. That's just the nature of doing anything in public. But for the most part, we get nothing but like, claps and applause and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I still know that not everybody's going to enjoy what it is that we do or appreciate it or see it the same way we do. So I have to think of, how do I get 51% to hopefully feel this sort of way? And a lot of it, even though it's the design portion, it still relates back to like, how am I treating and handling that business relationship from the get-go? And all the people that are actually seeing us represented out there, like, we used to just wear whatever we wanted. Now we have like team shirts. It makes sense because if we had somebody on site they should just, the dynamic would change a lot. We'd have sometimes people come in to visit, or we started doing these community events. There all of a sudden there'd be 20 people at a wall and you didn't know who was who. So we started slowly realizing like, perception is everything along each step of the way. So I just do my best to communicate and to try to explain to everybody what's the situation. We're dealing with some like personal health stuff now. So I've had to reach out to everybody and basically give them like a 2 week kind of move back situation. And of course, everybody's more than willing to accommodate. But just knowing that open communication stuff, that's still a part of the story that the client's going to potentially tell in the future, which is like, hey, what experience did I have? Like at the end of the day, cool, I might have a nice piece up there, but truthfully, I've had some, designs we've done that probably could have gone better on the relation side. And I can see like, I mean, they might still praise the artwork, but I don't know how they'll necessarily speak on us because I didn't take certain aspects of that as serious as I could have. So I now understand that that is very important. The setting everything up beforehand, during, and then even after, just reminding people how much it might have meant to you and stuff. And like, I do my occasional once a year thank you, usually not around the holidays, but just at a random time throughout the year, just to like basically say I appreciate it again. With no hopes of anything aside from that person seeing that message, just because again, it did change my life. And I know I usually refer to it's changed the community as well. Like that's what it really did.
Love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You made so many good points too. There's a lot of gold in there. Especially that idea of whether it's fine art or it's murals or it's sculptures. I mean, it's a relationship business. We are in a relationship business. We're not selling, low cost dollar items, none of us are. And it's kind of like it's products, but it's also services. Like we're doing both to a certain extent. And it's like
Yeah.
you have to toggle that line of building that relationship because also you never know, what that may bring down the line. You're not doing it because it may bring something down, but also like you want to you want to have a good reputation anyways, and they'll probably gonna enjoy it even more if they're like, there was this cool artist that was like up in the lift, and I got to say hello to them during my lunch break at work. Like it's just a different interaction. Like why not? Just
Our
it
log
goes a long way.
100%. Our largest project to date, no joke. We never even talked to the owners. It was the most surreal experience ever. We got commissioned. They owned the business inside, but they didn't own the property. And without getting too much into it, who knows why? But ultimately, I'll just leave it at this. We never end up meeting them or talking to them. They weren't at the ribbon cutting or anything. So to this day, I think it's so interesting. Like that hasn't happened yet since then, but I'm like, wow, like that's possible. Like that's a reality where you could spend 2 months outside and not even know the people who are like in charge of that thing outside. That shows you how like property is very different than the business and stuff. And then again, they have the public side of things. So it's a never ending, each situation is very different. So it's really interesting just to see those different ways that some of these jobs actually take place.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot more stakeholders than alone in my studio and I made this thing and ta-da! Now I
Yeah.
posted, please buy it versus like the interactions back and forth. That is for sure. And of course, we love the super nice clients that give us a lot of freedom. But before I get derailed on that, because I feel like we can talk about that a long time. Um, I do want to ask you about your book. So, Positive Mental Artist says here focuses on resilience and growth for creatives. What inspired you to write it?
For sure. It took me 35 years to put it out. I probably wanted to write a book since I was like in my 20s, so I'll make a very long story short. But I have had a ton of I feel like I was very fortunate growing up. My parents gave me I didn't grow up in the best household, but my parents gave me a tremendous amount of freedom with at the same time, like, it wasn't like unsolicited freedom, do whatever you want. It was like, if you can do this, you get this. So it wasn't necessarily the best way to grow up. If you get good grades, basically, I can do as I please. So that's not really the best way to raise a child because I did that in my mind. It meant, hey, okay, you make straight A's, you can literally do as you want. And I ended up taking that attitude essentially like throughout my entire life and until it wasn't until like my 20s and stuff where I realized like life actually started happening to me where like things were getting hard. It wasn't more than just a breakup here or there. It was like losing friends, stuff like that. And I ended up getting into substances and stuff. So I spent a large amount of my life essentially kind of being like trapped behind like my own crap, if you will. And knowing, like, no joke, I remember I was probably 23 years old, and I remember just being in not a good space. And I just knew, I remember having these conversations with my brother, which was like, I had this internal sense that literally said, unless you can break free of this crap and express your creativity, it's like for you personally, this is going to be a never-ending cycle and it won't end well. So I knew like these goals and these ambitions, which weren't very clear at the time, I knew that I was at least hindering a lot of them by doing the stuff that I was doing. So that was like my biggest catalyst to like over the years. I didn't stop right away by any means, but it was the voice in my head that always like clawed back at me, which was like you're weakening yourself. You're not being comfortable in front of people. You're scared to show stuff. And I was like, spending so many years just under the influence, I'm like, is that how much of that is me or how much is that is the substances keeping me from actually expressing myself the right way? So I realized up until about what made me actually finally write this book is, I got my life together slowly but surely, but I still had a lot of habits and mindsets that basically stuck with me, which some of them were very positive, which moved me through this stuff, but a lot of them were very hindering and like kind of held me back a lot. And the idea of the book came essentially after I lost my mom. It was the summer of 2022. After I lost her and this last job finished up, I basically went through like a hellish period where I finally was in the process. I could actually grieve and stuff, and I just started like fanatically writing. And I would find myself waking up very early in the morning. No matter what the weather was, I'd go to the same area of the park oftentimes, could be rain, snow, whatever. And I would, find a little tree that I could hang out under and I would write. And I would write obsessively. And a lot of those things were in there was just, I had like stuff like, why do I care so much and try so hard but blank? Why is like, asking these general questions and truthfully, I actually remember the day. It was the day after my birthday. So my mom passed in 2022. So it's 2023, just maybe 7, 8 months later. It's my birthday. My brother's in town from Florida visiting. And I basically posed some of the same questions that I was asking, like my life or God or whatever you have you, whatever that thing is out there. I asked him the same stuff. And it was like I got hit with felt like I got hit with the most aha, which was like, you get almost everything that you are asking for. The issue is you oftentimes don't ask for you're asking for A when you really want, B and C and D and E. So I slowly started realizing, okay, like I was at this breaking point in my life, which was like even though I did a few murals at this time, I was still working a full-time job. That full-time job, I always said, I'm going to stay here. I gave me freedom to do whatever I wanted because I could do some of it remotely. But I said, as soon as I stopped learning and growing, I need to leave this place. And coincidentally,
Mhm.
the company was being purchased by a corporate entity at the same time. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm losing my stability, this, and that. At the same time, a job showed up that I wasn't looking for that presented this thing to me, which was like my out. Like, if you take this job, it pays you half of what you get this thing for a full year. Go take this big opportunity. And I remember asking my daughter, it was her 10th birthday. I was like, what do you think about dad leaving his 5+ year job for doing art? And she was all on board. And the book kind of after that job finished, I quit my job, finished that big project. It was a big sports center, which we're about to do another project on top of, which is really neat. But after that, I was like, it's all up to me. Like nobody is now at this point, it's like all up to me and to take anything I quote unquote learned or whatever experienced and to put it really to practice because I officially have 3 children to feed. I have to take care of myself. I have to pay for all these things. And I had to really like put my mindset to the test. And fast forward 2 years after that, we've had immense success. I was able to at the time, we had no clients lined up. We actually are doing a building as our 6th building for the same client right now. So like that was like my big, oh my gosh. Like I read a few different books that kind of like right after that we finished that job that kind of showed me like, even though I read all the time, how limited I really was actually thinking because at the end of the day, like this thing asked me, like, it's like when you write down your dreams and aspirations, like how easily are you able to write them? Or does your hand stop and say that's not possible yet? And I realized I wasn't thinking big enough. So I remember thinking, okay, I want to get 20 of this. And I said, no, let me get 120 of this. And I was like, that's a different problem to solve. How do I go and solve that problem? So the book became a distillation of like all these little points that I wrote it during a period where I was like, oh my gosh, we just crushed 18 months of nonstop work. I can take a break. I'm in Florida. I'm literally just like living, hanging out with my family. And I started really piecing together this thing over like our winter here. And I just really wanted to put this thing out, which was like, man, like I learned so much stuff over the years. And here's the things I actually really, really did apply to myself, which actually allowed me to finally, I feel like, break through these different barriers that I had. Some of them were financial, a lot of them were mental, and I think they all deal hand in hand. And it really dealt with a lot of different stuff, like relying on other people, getting comfortable, just testing stuff and just trying and, taking leaps of faith. And like, again, things I would do in the past, but I didn't do them maybe to the same degree in which I did recently. But I realize now, like, your mindset is absolutely everything. You could have all the information, all the knowledge, all the skill, but if you're depressed, if you're not thinking big enough, if you're just at a state where you're not even thinking of the problem to solve, you're just all that stuff sitting there. So I started coming up with my own problems to solve, which were very community focused. And I used artwork to essentially anchor the other problems of some of the clients and the people that we know in the area. I just use my artwork now to anchor, our solution, which is a beautiful mural storytelling, with their problems, which is oftentimes educating the population on something.
I love that. And
Absolutely.
I'll say real quick, it's like we've had several artists mention this before on the podcast too. It's like our number one job as artists is to make a problem that then we have to solve. So
Right.
this is excellent. And it's like it helps because if you have that clarity, like you're mentioning, the problem you're solving is here are the three goals that are sitting at the top of the mountain. How do I get to the top of the mountain? It's like it's all the way over there. And then any opportunity that comes in, you just go, does this get me closer to the mountain or farther from the mountain? And it just kind of like gives you that clarity of mind. And of
Mm.
course, that mountain is a moving goalpost, technically, has legs on it, apparently, but it does help to
Oh, yeah.
know what you're laser focused on instead of like, oh, it would be nice if, and then you leave it like that. It's too vague. You'll drift.
Yeah, I had no idea I was
That's
drifting
awesome.
the way I was for as much as I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And now, what are some of those like key takeaways for artists who read your book that they can then apply directly into their careers?
For sure. I want to touch on what she just mentioned, which was like the mountain. And it's funny, I bring that up in the book to a degree. But I mentioned, like, I heard this through like a meditation thing one time, which was really neat. And to me, it helps me tremendously, which was, instead of wondering how do I necessarily get up there, pretend you're already up there and you're pointing back down to your older self and you're telling your, your earlier version how to get, hey, how you got up there. Well, I did it by
Nice.
building these relationships. I did it by doing this, and that. I now realize, like, it's cool that you said that it's a moving goalpost, because even though I might have known that, again, it's one of those things that I knew it maybe logically, but I didn't take it like to heart. And now I realize, like, that goalpost, which forever moves, that means that you're continuously, quote unquote, climbing the mountain. If you do not find a way to be not just content, but genuinely as happy, as great as you can be while you're in that process of climbing, then it doesn't matter. By the time you get to your destination, you got there miserably or something happened. And then, like you already mentioned, the goalpost is now moved. So sure, you might have hit your destination, but now you don't even care that you hit it because you didn't do it in a way. So I'm at this point now, I've just had life test me so much that, like, I'm generally believe, like, yeah, like the journey itself, and that's what's in there a little bit, is like just find a way to honor that and appreciate that and to try to make that, like, with homeschooling three kids, like, that probably had something to do with the book a lot too, because a lot of the stuff I believe, like, I have to actually put to the test with them, and it's my duty to, like, instill stuff in them, which is like, they're responsible for self-learning. That's how I look at it. Like, we'll spend time with you each day to learn, but you're going to be responsible yourself to pick up your book and to do specific things. No different than I, at my age, I'm responsible for waking up and to choosing to make sure that I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, I didn't learn that until, who knows, mid 20s or something. I don't even know. Like, so if they can learn that at a very young age, and again, even other artists, like, understand, like, they are going to set their goalpost. That's like the key thing at all, their metric. And then it's very hard to pull away and compare, your metrics. It's the brain wants to make comparisons. I personally try not to even look at, listen to, and see a lot of stuff, because I know it's going to influence me in a lot of ways. So if I'm actually working on stuff, like, for example, the book or stuff like that, like, I didn't read anything or listen to stuff for probably like 90 days prior to, like, maybe not that long, but the goal is just to, like, completely think of, like, what am I coming up with versus, like, what's, you might think it's inspiration from you, but it's really something your brain picked up on. And I, like, try to tell, every artist along the way, like, especially like some of the younger ones we mentor, who, like, say, like, yeah, I think I do want to pursue art. Or we talk to a ton of kids who have no interest in doing art, right? And we're just there because we're doing artwork and stuff with the class and stuff. But I tell them, like, they're essentially still they're solving the same problems, which is like, what am I doing with my day-to-day life? And without making it too deep at a young age, I'm like, that's generally, I try to put questions into the kids' heads, or even in the artist heads or the creatives' heads in this book, that hope maybe they're not even thinking about. Or if they are, like, are they applying actual, like, yeah, you might have been posed a question before or a thought, but have you actually designed a plan around that question, or what would actually happen if X happened? And now, like, I've been the kind of person, like, I think it's because I was raised a certain way, but when life happened, my parents just, picked me up and took care of it. So it wasn't until a certain age where I'm like, dude, like, even all the people around me, like, it's up to me to pick myself up. Like, when I lost my mom, my brother could be there as much as he wanted to, my partner could be there, my kids could, but I had to literally like I had to pull that energy out of myself to basically like still commit to something. And I think one of the biggest points in that book that I try to make, and there's, it's just it's just a bunch of like I said, it's a dissection of a lot of stuff that I just learned over the years, but it's that life's gonna happen. And if you don't set those, if you don't have that goalpost set, and you won't even know, like, how often you said some really great words, which is like you won't even know what's going to take you or pull you away from this thing that you're looking to do. And if you don't have knowing what you're doing, then as life happens, that's when you actually like, because you don't have a goalpost set up, life's going to happen. Now, guess what? You're deviating so far from the plan because you didn't really even make the plan. And I generally believe life has a plan for you. And sometimes, like, yeah, it might pull you off track, but like it's up to you to really stick with that thing. And like, I mentioned like I think I briefly mentioned in that book, but it's like I feel like I was called to do a lot of this stuff. Like generally speaking, like I really do. Like I don't a lot of stuff has really just fallen into our laps. And like, yeah, we've definitely worked hard. Don't get me wrong for sure. But sometimes it seems like I said, it's like when the city reaches out to us and they want us to do a community or a mural with the zoo, and I mentioned like I would like to do it with X in this time and these people, and they give us like a big thumbs up, and then a ton of people come out and show support. Like in my mind, like that's like kind of a little bit of destiny because I spent years trying to get people to listen to my music or look at my other artwork, and like it's like they didn't care. And then meanwhile, somebody asked me to make a painting on a wall. I do it, but I'm still thinking about all the stuff I want to do. And all these people are like, oh my gosh, look what you did. Here's some money and here's this and here's that. And I'm like, cool, but I want to do what I want to do. And no joke, it was like again, I'll bring up my mom for the 50th time, but after she passed, I started being very precise with my time. And I really only allowed but so much stuff to come to me. And like some of these, at this point, like I said, 2 years in, being full time, and we've done exceeding, like last year was amazing. We crushed our figures more than what I was thinking we would do. Um, but I generally believe like it's kind of meant for us to do. And like I said, as soon as I put other people involved in it, and that's stuff I've just heard from other people, make I don't want people to rely on me. My goal is to build them up to be able to, use us and the murals as a tool. But if I can help support somebody, like for Kayla, for example, I think we paid out her like, a little over 40 grand last year to help us with projects. That's life changing for another individual. So she's able to go and pursue other things. Like as soon as I put that responsibility kind of on my plate, it literally becomes more rewarding. It's like a different thing. And then like there's a ton of people who used to not offer volunteer opportunities, and then it got to the point where people were like, no, you really need to. Like, I had this whole thing, like, I don't, people got to get paid. And she's like, but there's, the 40-year-old woman, the 50-year-old woman that wants to just come and paint with you. She's not looking for $25 an hour, dude. She just wants to like come and actually just be a part of this thing. So it opened me up to do a lot more community-based stuff. And I basically mentioned that in the book, which is like rely on your community. And it's like one of those things I think a lot of times we maybe neglect, or we're so social oriented or online oriented that we really gear up to thinking, what do I need to do on the internet to get more stuff? And I've realized like for me, and I mean, I can attest, I've seen this proven out countless times, my brother's a great example, moves to a whole new city, takes him 90 days. He knows most people. Why? Because there's like a set path you can do just to go and meet people in your business in your area. So my thing was like, think about all those people that are local to you and how you can affect their lives, and the rest will just take care of itself. Because at the end of the day, I genuinely believe if you're doing work that's causing the world to be better and to grow and to become more, free of itself, I genuinely believe the right stuff's going to make its way to you. So I try to make those points and a lot more in that book.
Nice. Oh, we love it. Now, Brandon, as you're keeping doing all these different projects and you're back to back with projects, are you seeing any trends that are shaping, near future? Obviously, none of us have a crystal ball, but
Mhm.
near future shaping public art and perhaps like, the types of jobs that clients are asking for murals.
Sure. I can speak on, like I said, I'm really poor with staying up on like as far as like social media and stuff goes. I really do like live in my own little bubble, but I'm also not ignorant to know like I try to do my research and stuff. We do a lot of traveling, so I get a chance to like see how other things are taking place. And I can actually give you a very I can actually tell you a trend that I very well know. I actually had a trip down to St. Petersburg, Florida recently, and I saw, I got a chance to meet with some of the people that put together the Shine Festival down there. And
Nice.
it was very interesting to know the same stuff that we're dealing with here, which is like essentially how before I even knew funding actually entered into artwork the way that I did, everything was very commercial based. So a client has a business, they take money from their revenue and they pay us. Then eventually we learned like, okay, like a lot of these organizations we're working with, they're actually pulling in grant dollars that are coming from some sort of thing or some mission driven, engine. And that's how they're receiving the funding. And we're able to use that funding to then anchor artwork to it. Once I saw that that was actually the majority of our revenue, then that started clicking in my head like, okay, that's actually a thing that funds a lot of public art that we see. A lot of public art is being funded literally from government entities and or nonprofits that are pulling funding from other things that are basically still funneling money down from the government. So once I saw that, okay, like I saw artwork here and like the art leagues and stuff like that. Slowly, we got to see how our funding in Maryland slowly changed. The same thing happened in St. Petersburg. What I think is the same thing happening in the areas of Colorado. So what I see, what's personally happening in my life, I actually, after I met with a few people down in Florida, it was crazy for me to see that they're doing the exact same thing, which to me, I'm like, if I'm doing it and they're doing it, that means a lot of people are doing it, which was relying a lot more on those local, real big local businesses that are like actually there to do philanthropic work. So like we have, there's a company called Purdue Farms. A lot of people have heard of them probably. They just, their chicken plant, they're like well nationally known and even further. They have a plant right here in town. So what better way for, yes, the government can give funding and stuff like that, but who would be a better community advocate? A commercial business like that, an industrial business like that, who can actually like put their money where their mouth is and throw money towards public art to see it's up to people like us to create programs and to create certain situations for the artwork to live. And then it's up to people like us to then go out and to tell people, entities like that, that this is our goal, this is our objective, this is why we do it. And we think that you would be a great way to be able to actually like help foster these ideas to help grow the community. And what's great is a lot of these businesses, and this is just like game right here, a lot of these larger businesses, they literally have funds that have to go out and support community endeavors. They literally do it for tax reasons. They do it for also community, like just commitment and stuff. A lot of these people generally do want to see better in their area, but it's just like anything. The more busy we get, the more detached sometimes we get to stuff. And if some people are in the position where they can start giving funding dollars to stuff versus their time, then it's up to people like us. Like I learned this in marketing. When somebody would reach out to us and I'm the marketing director of a company and somebody's looking for, well, let's just say 2,500 bucks for a 5K. I either have the funding or I don't. I either think it's a good idea or I don't. I'm not offended that that email graced my desk, that somebody's putting together a thing and that they're looking for support. And I realize like I can do that same exact thing. So I'm seeing that like, the trend that I'm seeing, which is very focused around me, is how is a lot of public art going to come about? So again, I know a lot of stuff comes from, everybody has different types of clients. I know some people strictly do stuff for like real estate, for example, but then even still real estate also oftentimes has private funding that's still trickling down. So it's really about like how are we able to leverage these partnerships that exist in our local area? And I think that leveraging those, that actually will then amplify. Like if to me, like if you want to have more success outside of your home area or further, like you can definitely do cold email, you can do all that stuff. It definitely works. But I feel like what's happening on a trend level is like I think a lot more community focused oriented stuff is slowly taking place because those are like that's where you're going to build long-term sustainability. And like in my case, I'm generally trying to create circumstances and situations that are going to be continual. So whether it's a festival, whether it's an art program, whether it's something like that, it's so I can create it, install it, get it moving, nurture it, water it, and then allow other people to hopefully keep that thing mature or to get that thing all the way from its early stage of maturity and allow every year for those situations to come back. That's how I feel like I can best support my area. And like I said, when I went down to Florida, I saw like, okay, they're losing funding in this area. So now they either slow down what they're doing or they go and look for the funding in another location. In the same location that I'm looking in, they're looking in for that. And then I found out somebody in Colorado is doing the same thing. And it's, again, leveraging the partnerships of the businesses, even the city government and stuff that you operate within, and just seeing like how, like, telling them what your goals are and figuring out how you can anchor again. How public art really does shape and change or transform a community, as you know. So it's like if these people are interested in having a very strong impact, and I always tell people it's so easy, like X amount of dollars will allow us to put a piece of public art out there, which could in theory last 10, 20 years. I know because I can see the sponsorship thing because I get it too. You spent X amount of money on this one-time event. It's an amazing event, but once it's done, it was gone. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
once some of them see that, they're like, holy crap, like, yeah, we spent X amount of money on a billboard. And sometimes, like, just like signage laws, you can't even promote certain things with that. So this is a really cool way for them to be able to inject their branding into something without being so straightforward with it. It's more subjective and it's just a more, to me, like nuanced but subtle and actually true way. And I think that, as more businesses, especially the commercial ones, can get ingrained in the public art sector, I think that's where it started from. And then I think the government kind of stepped in and started taking on its own role. And I think, and there's more to me, I can see it. Like I'm slowly educating and teaching people. So obviously, if I'm doing it here, more and more muralists are popping up everywhere. So I just think there's like a growing need and desire to see the area transform. And I bet no idea I have is very unique. I think everybody's doing it in their own way. And I think it's probably happening on all across, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I love the way that you position that to be really seeing that larger impact that businesses can make, because you're so right with that. Of there are amazing festivals, there's amazing outreach and philanthropy that these companies do, but saying, okay, well, if someone moves to the area in 2 months, they're not going to know about this festival that you necessarily had last year, but having a mural that celebrates it, being like, oh, well, what was that mural? Like, what was that made for? It's like, it's also another storybook, or like entry point into storytelling, which I feel like makes it full circle for you. And I loved earlier too, talking about how you mentor young and emerging artists through whether internships, working with the school, and like your one team member that you said you like trained her, and now we're able to like obviously pay her and kind of set her free to her future projects. What do you find is the most rewarding part of working with young or emerging artists within your business?
For sure. We had so there's like a few people that come to mind. One, like we just got to work with a foreign exchange student from Ukraine. She's like a local high school kid, and she literally needs to give volunteer hours. So when I went to the school and gave a little speech and stuff, she found out we were doing something at the zoo. I got a chance for her to come out, and she straight up said, like, compared to all the stories that she heard, she got to what she believes was the most probably rewarding volunteerism that she had a chance to, or that people have had that she's heard, because she's involved in what she's doing. But to see, like, like what better way can, like, I gave somebody who's not from here an opportunity to be able to paint alongside like literally just general members of the community. And for the most part, like I asked her, I'm like, I'm assuming, because this is how it was in school, like a lot of those kids when they come here, they're just involved in school. And then it's up to hopefully the friend group they make or something where they're able to go out in the world. But how often are they able to participate in some sort of like community driven thing that's actually going to last? So that was incredibly rewarding. That's a whole separate thing. Seeing Kayla, somebody like Kayla, who I brought up earlier. So, we were looking for like an assistant, and like she did plein air paintings, and she was so good at what she did on like the small scale that I was like, if you can do this, you can take what I make and make it big. You just got to figure out how, and we'll show you as best as we can. But if I do my job well enough, I'll show you something, and then you'll show me 10 more things, right? And that's literally what happened. Like it took 90 days, maybe 120. And we start leaving her alone at the job site. Next, she's leading a team of 4 people doing a big project. And it's like, and then right before she left, like, and you can look at her story, I'll shout her out, but it's the colorful kayak on Instagram and stuff. You can see right before she moved, she got to do her first mural ever. So for us to have her help us, and then for her to land a mural opportunity, and it was this best send off ever to go start her, completely different next chapter of her story. I think, to me, I can't top that. And like, she was a nurse. She went to school. She was she loved art, but she ended up going to school for nursing, and not, excuse me, not nursing, become an English teacher. She ended up teaching for just a few years. It was during COVID. She's like, not for me. She started working as a nurse, or excuse me, was a nursing assistant, and did that whole program and stuff. And long story short, we just basically, she ended up working with us and worked with us full time. And just, I got to see, when somebody actually trusts, because she was saying like everybody's like calling her, except for her family, the nurses and stuff, like, you're going to do what? You're going to leave there to do what? Like, I got to see how that played out, and how she trusted herself, and how we created an environment for her to, comfortably to grow. And like, we made sure that, like she worked, like we had a business to fulfill, we had objectives and goals, but my goal was like, I don't want to detract from anything that you do, which means we're going to be supporting of each other, which means any event that you have or stuff like that, you work around those. So like, don't let us tell you when you're going to work. Like, you tell us when you have freedom. And she would slowly, she crushed that. So she was still able to do her own thing. So for her to actually get to the point where she knew exactly what she was doing when she did that mural. And it was just so cool, because it was the first time she ever prepped the wall 100% by herself, sealed it 100% by herself. Any other time, it's been some other thing there helping her. So it was really neat to see that. And then last but not least, and this is going to be super cool, but like, I'm in my off, like we're in our like, warehouse office now, and like next month we have a first ever field trip of kids coming here. So we get to go on like a tour around town on a school bus, look at a bunch of murals that we did, talk about,
Nice.
yeah, and then they're gonna come back here and basically paint all over this white wall, and we're gonna, like give them some stuff to fill in, give them some blank spaces. We have two huge garage doors. You can't see it. There's one tucked over there, but they'll be huge and ventilated, so like air can come in and move right through. It's super neat, and my goal is like not, is to find people who probably don't have the biggest aspirations in art, and that's mostly because I think a lot of people they need to see a clear path. Like for me, I had no interest in doing art as a career. I didn't, not until I was in my 20s and stuff. So in high school, it was just like it was study something, go to college, and then that's where you're gonna find your success sort of thing. Now, neither of my parents going to college, they weren't very forceful of that, but they were just like, you got to figure out something that you're gonna do. However, art never crossed my mind because the only vision I had of being making money with art was looking at my art teacher. And I was like, well, I don't want to teach per se, at least not art. So there was no art career. I didn't know what that looked like. And I feel like nowadays with the internet and stuff, you get to see people technically making a job out of anything. And I think my goal would be to give somebody a chance to be able to participate in something that we do, ideally from start to finish, if possible, so they can see something crazy, not just to be able to create something for the community and they have like ownership and pride for it, but to realize that they can just do something completely different and new. And really, to take that and hopefully like some of the stuff that we do blows me away still to this day. So I'd assume it would blow somebody new away. And again, whether they want to pursue murals or art or anything, the goal is to just inspire them to realize that they can actually still create some sort of momentous thing and in the area, make a difference, and honestly just like trust themselves to figure it out because that's literally what we end up doing.
Absolutely. Love that, love that, love that. Well, real quick, Brandon, we're going to take a quick word from our sponsors. So we're going to take a quick break for that. But next up, we're going to be asking about how you define success. So we'll do that here in a moment.
This episode is brought to you by our Level Up Artist resources.
We understand that life as a modern artist can be both exciting and overwhelming. Plus, there's a lot of information out there, but what do visual artists actually need?
We've spent countless hours of trial and error, weeding through tons of information to find the gold so that you don't have to waste time going down those endless rabbit holes.
We created a library of PDF resources with bonus videos that cover everything from artist documents to exhibition prep, social media to technology, sales strategies, and artist mindset, several templates, and more.
Ready to get started? Head on over to levelupartists.com/shop to level up your creative career today.
Welcome back, everybody. So, Brandon, a question we like to ask all our guests: how do you define success as an artist?
I would say at this point for sure, waking up and at least feeling fulfilled with whatever it is that you're doing. That's it. Like, are you on the path to the thing that you claim that you want to move towards? And how do you know if you are? You'll feel fulfilled at the end of the day. So that you get to define what that ever looks like to you. I just think it's actually just being on the path towards doing the thing that you say you're going to do, and it needs to fill you up. It can't just be if you're reaching your quote unquote goals, but you're feeling still empty or something's going on. I think there's something else lacking there. So it would just be actually like making sure that your paths that you're taking are actually causing you're not just going the direction you're going, but you're going in a manner in which you actually feel as though this is the best use of your time, and this is this is as good as I can get it right now.
Absolutely. And that actually ties into a saying that I've shared many times on the podcast, but I feel like it's connected to a lot of what you've said earlier. Is a piece of advice that I got early on was if you're going to decide to climb the ladder, make sure it's leaned up against the right wall. Because oftentimes people get so tunnel visioned on, okay, I need to go toward this goal, go towards this goal. And they get there and you're like, okay, well, this goal actually takes me away from my family and friends. It's not making me fill my day with work that I find rewarding and giving back and community focused. And so that you get like so hooked on one end goal and realizing I actually don't want to be up on this top of this wall. I want to be over on that wall. You have to climb back down and go back up. So it's a perfect analogy for what you were just saying. But I am curious, what is one piece of advice that you wish you had heard before you got started on your creative journey?
For sure. The best, let's see. Probably to dream bigger. I think that would be and at the time I think I was dreaming quote unquote big, But like I now realize like even today, like if I have a like your goal is to continuously to improve and to grow. And the whole saying, I think it was it aim for this, aim for the moon, you'll surely hit the stars or something like that. It's just like it's just knowing that the thing that you're looking to achieve, like, is that really as good as you can get? Because I promise you, if you just close your eyes and just pretend that you're going to do, let's say, 5 to 10 times more of something, it might seem intimidating, but it's really neat because if you sat there and you said you had to solve this problem, your brain's a problem solving device and it will actually create ways and circumstances for you to solve these problems. So I now realize like, yeah, if I could give myself one more advice, it'd probably be to solve more complex problems and to actually start trusting that I can actually do those things. A lot of times we just want
Love
to hit
it.
a lot of times we just want to check off the checkbox, and I think that's not the point. I now know that's not the point. It's now to, again, aim high enough that you're just generally excited to head in the direction you're going. You're not putting any timetables on it. You're just moving it as best as you can.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I mean, checking the checkbox can still be very satisfying, and we do
Oh, it
need
is.
to celebrate the wins
I
along
check
the
my
way.
check boxes, I
But
promise.
no, for sure, having that idea of, like we were discussing earlier, of like that moving goalpost and like make sure the journey towards it is, it's in alignment with what you want to do and what makes you happy and, the people around you as well. So that's super awesome. Brandon, if somebody were to randomly hand you $100 right now, what would you splurge on or invest in? It has to be something that brings you joy and relates to your art or business.
Ooh, we take trips all the time. I would just throw it towards like a hotel probably and just take the family. And we like that's like our big thing. It's probably just been on a small road trip, just go out, eat. I'll just add it to the pot of going out to eat, looking at some cool stuff in town, whether it's art, it's not always art. Sometimes we go to a museum or we just go out in nature, but travel for sure with the family.
Nice. That's perfect. And Brandon, do you have any exciting projects coming up that our listeners should know about?
I do. It should be, it won't be physically our biggest project, but it's definitely our largest client to date. We're actually doing May 1st, we're starting a project for the Baltimore Ravens. So
No.
whether you're from the country or you're like, you're a resident of Maryland or not, it's still, I'm not even a huge football fan. They know that already, but it's like, it's still insanely compelling and just amazing to know that we got to the point where we can work with a client such as that, just getting a chance to see how they handled, the business side of stuff and knowing that we can get all the way from an idea, phone conversation, all the way down to like signing an agreement, having the wall and all sorts of stuff. So that's yeah, starting May 1st. Hopefully I'm going to document it pretty well because I really am not the best at that, but that's a project that I genuinely believe it would be silly not to. I'll leave it at that.
Brandon, add the
Absolutely.
word yet at the end. You know how you were talking about having your brain solve problems? Say you're not good at it yet.
Not good at it yet. Could be
Mind
better.
hack. There it is.
Yeah.
There
Mindset
you
hack.
go. And Brandon, I'm actually from right outside of Baltimore originally, so maybe I'll have to schedule my trip home this May around that project and I can come check out the job site of what you're working on because that
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's gonna be super cool. I'm humbled. It's neat. It's actually on this, like I said, we did a job on this thing like on a sports center. So we're actually able to reuse another part of their property and we're able to put the mural up on that wall. So
Oh,
that's why again, maintaining good relationship with your previous clients. I'm like, hey, you guys want a free mural? Like we have this cool opportunity. You're a sports center and you teach football practice. So like, what do you think? And
yeah.
they were all
Come on now. Check, check, check. We love it. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Real quick before you go, how can listeners stay in contact with you after they listen to this episode?
For sure. Follow my mural agency's page. We are Limitless Studios. That's that name on everything: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever have you. I'm personally Brandon Bell, but yeah, you'll spell my name with the instead of an O, just put an X in there. Otherwise, you won't find me because I have the most common name, it feels like, in the world. We just pop up. But other than that, yeah, just follow We Are Limitless Studios and you'll find me for sure.
Perfect. We'll make sure to link those with the show notes. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Oh, for sure. I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure for sure.
Absolutely. Well, in the meantime, for our listeners, if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like for us to answer on the podcast, you can reach us through social media. I'm at ameighart across all platforms.
And I'm at jsandersstudio on all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we're at levelupartists on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you in the next episode.